Hey there, everybody! Hey, it's your good pal Dustin back with another episode of Turn It Around. Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that. As always, I hope you all had a wonderful and blessed Sunday. I hope you got to spend time with God in whatever way that looks like for you, whether it's going to church, reading your Bible, singing along to Christian music, or taking in YouTube or TikTok Christian content. I hope you got to spend time with God today. I hope you get to do it throughout the week, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed week ahead. Sorry about that. I got tongue-tied for some reason. Anyway, we are on episode 128, continuing our study in Esther. We are on day 6 of the study, and it was titled Ironic Honor. And of course, as always, I've split these into 2 parts, so yeah, this is part 1. So, to recap from last week, we found out that Esther was going to request of Xerxes to spare the Jewish people. She planned a banquet, invited both Xerxes and Haman, and then instead of making her request, she requested that Xerxes and Haman come to another banquet she was holding the next day. So, Haman leaving the banquet, probably a little drunk, celebratory mood. He's on top of the world, king of the world, as the recap says. And I mean, that wasn't far, most likely, from what his ambitions actually were. It's classic. Classic villain behavior. Want to take over the world. Bah. So Haman leaving the banquet, feeling like the king of the world, probably what he wanted. But then, who does Haman see but Mordecai? The one man who has vexed him, who has, in Haman's opinion, disrespected him, basically spit in his face, all sorts of things like that. Mordecai was the one man who would not bow to him. Mordecai was the one man standing in the way of Haman's ambition. Seeing that Mordecai still wouldn't bow down to him, his happy mood was just gone, and he was furious, burned with anger. But he was able to control himself at the time and hurry home, where he bragged to his wife and friends of his great wealth, his sons, his promotions, and the special banquet he had just attended. But then, Mordecai invades his mind again, and his mood suddenly soured. Because Haman realized that as long as Mordecai refused to bow to him and still sat in his place in service to the king, all of these things that Haman is bragging about would be meaningless. So his wife came up with the wonderful idea of building a 70-foot high gallows and having Mordecai impaled on it in the morning. Of course, he would need to get Xerxes' permission to actually perform the execution, but at this point, Haman was like, that's not even an issue. It's whatever. And then Haman could go on his merry way to Esther's banquet. Haman, of course, loved the idea. It allowed him to get rid of a rival. It allowed him to get a little measure of revenge in his mind against Mordecai. And he probably spent a sleepless night supervising the construction of this gallows or this spike or whatever. But unbeknownst to Haman, there was another sleepless night going on at the same time as his. We'll learn about that in this chapter, and we will see the God of Providence was at work to redeem his people from Haman's wicked intentions, bring about his own destruction. So now with that, let us read Esther chapter 6. Esther 6. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was found recorded there that Mordecai had exposed Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. Xerxes, this is me. This is me just kind of, adding to it. Just to kind of, give y'all a little bit more of an idea. Picturing the scene and all that. So Xerxes turns to the servant reading the Chronicles and asks, "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" "Nothing has been done for him," his attendants answered. The king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about impaling Mordecai on the pole he had set up for him. His attendants answered, "Haman is standing in the court. Bring him in," the king ordered. When Haman entered, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought to himself, "Who is there that the king would rather honor than me?" So Haman's already, he's got a big head, got a big ego, so he's thinking the king is talking about him without just saying it. So he answered the king, "For the man the king delights to honor, have them bring a royal robe the king has worn and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and the horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" "Go at once," the king commanded Haman. "Get the robe and the horse, and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended." Yeah, you can probably imagine Haman's face just fell. I can only imagine that. He went from yeah to... So you can imagine Haman is like, "What is going on? What? This is not going to plan here for Haman." But Haman, still probably thinking big of himself, is like, "Okay, we can work through this. We can figure this out." So he goes and gets the robe, gets the horse, robed Mordecai, and led him on horseback through the city streets, proclaiming before him, "This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor." Afterward, Mordecai returned to the king's gate, but Haman rushed home with his head covered in grief, and told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had happened to him. His advisors and his wife Zeresh said to him, "Since Mordecai, for whom your downfall has started, is of Jewish origin, you cannot stand against him. You will surely come to ruin." While they were still talking with him, the king's eunuchs arrived and hurried Haman away to the banquet Esther had prepared. So, Haman he's had a roller coaster of emotions over the last 2 days. He gets to go to a banquet, he's high, he's drunk, he's happy. Then he sees Mordecai and he gets angry. Then he gets on another high with Zeresh's recommendation about impaling Mordecai. He's on top of the world again, and then the king's like, I want you to honor Mordecai with all the things that you said that should be done for someone the king delights to honor. And then it just goes downhill from there. Because Haman has realized that once Xerxes finds out the people that Haman intends to destroy are the Jews, and Mordecai is of Jewish descent, the king will revoke Haman's edict that the Jews should be destroyed, and basically everything Haman had planned, had built up, crumbles. Just gets knocked down, just gets destroyed. All in a matter of, since there's not specific times, I would say in the matter of maybe 8 to 10 hours. It's on top of the world, and then everything just comes crumbling down. Zeresh and his advisors basically realize that Haman's finished. Like, if he keeps pushing for Mordecai to be executed, he will likely be the one executed if he keeps pushing. So we'll find out what happens with Mordecai, Esther, and Haman in the next chapter. But you can imagine things are not going to go well for Haman, which is, woo! We all like that. We all like to see a bad person, an evil person brought down by good people. We love that. We love that here. So, awesome. Everything's going wrong for Haman. Everything's going right for Mordecai and the Jews and Esther. We are at the point where we can see God's hand of providence has lifted up the Jewish people from the risk of destruction, just as God has always done. So now the first guided question for this part of the study, this day of the study, was when Xerxes called for a reading from the Chronicles of the events of his 12-year reign to that point, what selection did the servant just happen to bring to him? Now see, this is making it more like the servant knew what he was doing when he brought this specific area of the Chronicles to Xerxes. Almost like this servant was on Esther's side, on Mordecai's side, and was doing what he could to help. Because the servant brought him the Chronicle where it talks about how Mordecai exposed Bigthana and Teresh's conspiracy to kill Xerxes and basically save this king's life. And so this ultimately reminded Xerxes and Mordecai, which leads to everything else that happens in this particular chapter. You can only imagine that, because after Mordecai had saved the king and exposed the two officers, Xerxes was like, you will be honored. And then it never happens. And so you can imagine that when Xerxes is told that you haven't done anything for this man, you can imagine that Xerxes is like, oh my goodness, I need to make up for this. I need to fix this. This man deserves to be honored. He saved my life. And so Xerxes, of course, orders all that other stuff, all those other things to be done for Mordecai. And sometimes, sometimes we all make mistakes. We forget something, just something slips through the cracks, as it were. But then something reminds us of that thing that slipped through the cracks, and we're like, oh no, I've got to fix this. I've got to do something about this. Mistakes are normal. We're human. But God always keeps his promises. I always try to keep my promises if I'm able to. I try not to make a promise that I know I cannot fulfill. But God can make any promise. He can make a promise to an entire people that he will watch over them. He will deliver them from their enemies. He will protect them. And God will do it. God doesn't forget. God always remembers. And even if his deliverance doesn't happen in the time we wish it did, we can have faith and trust that at some point God will deliver us from whatever struggle. So don't get too hung up on if you make a mistake, you forget to do something for someone that you said you would do. It happens. God knows it happens. Other people should know it will happen, because again, we're human. But if those people are really your friends, your community, whatever, they will understand and they will forgive, and you can make up for your mistake. The point I want to make here is that God never forgets. He never forgets you. He never forgets me. So remember that God is always thinking of you and is always preparing to deliver you from whatever struggles you are facing. As always, I thank you all for being here. I thank you so much for the subscriptions, the likes, the shares, the comments when you leave them. I cannot thank you enough. I never thought I would even get to where I am as far as subscribers go. But I am so happy that I have. I am happy that even if all you watch is my short form content with my daily verses, I appreciate you. I appreciate everything you do. And if you do like what I do, please do share, like, subscribe if you haven't, so that hopefully my videos can get out to more people who need to hear the message that God is always thinking about us. And as always, my friends, remember that I love you, God loves you, and please remember to love yourselves and those around you. Till next time, my friends. Bye!